Why, hello there, I'm Professor Joel, and welcome to another episode of Planet Scooby Reviews. Today we are covering the episode, What the Heck's Going On? And this is episode 6 of season 1, and it originally aired on October 18th, 1969, so we're going back 51 years here. And this episode features the infamous scene where we see Shaggy on roller skates roll into a shower. We always see that in the opening credits. If you ever wondered what episode that came from, this is the one. And this episode sees the gang visiting their friend Sharon Weatherby, only to have their vacation interrupted by a ghostly neighbor who lives at a rundown mansion. Well, that's all I got to say, so enough of my jibber jabber, let's get to it. The episode begins as the camera focuses on the exterior of a spooky house where we hear a hypnotically commanding voice call out. The camera then shifts to a graveyard where we see a middle-aged bearded man walking in a trance towards the beckoning voice. We then cut to the mystery machine driving down a swampy road. Here we learn that they are headed to the Weatherby estate to visit their friend Sharon. During the drive, they see the bearded man walking possessed into an old mansion.
It sure is nice of Sharon to ask us up here for the weekend.
Hey! Look up there!
Jeepers! Someone's going into that old mansion.
Even though they find it kooky, they continue to Sharon's estate. At the Weatherby estate, Sharon and her father explain that they've been hearing a lot of strange noises and that her Uncle Stuart has vanished.
Gee, it's sure good to see all of you. It looks like my Uncle Stuart has vanished.
We've been hearing a lot of strange noises.
Daphne explains that they saw a man walking into a mansion, and Sharon's dad suggests they head to Kingston Mansion to investigate. At the Kingston Mansion, they run into an elderly man who turns out to be their Uncle Stuart, who is transformed into an old man.
Someone's in the shadows. Uncle Stuart!
Back at Weatherby Estate, they sit Uncle Stuart down where he explains he heard a ghostly voice call out that he just had to obey. In a trance, he walked past the Kingston Mausoleum and into the mansion where he saw the ghost of Elias Kingston.
A ghostly voice called out from the old mansion. I had to obey it. I went past the Kingston Mausoleum into the old mansion.
The ghost tells Stuart that he has to give the Weatherby fortune to the Kingston Mansion, or else his whole family will suffer the same fate of losing their youth as he just had.
And there is where I saw the ghost of Elias Kingston. The Weatherby fortune belongs to me. That's when he made me an old man.
Sharon's father attempts to call the sheriff, but the phone lines are dead, so Mr. Weatherby drives off to get the sheriff. While the gang head off to sleep, Scooby is left to guard Uncle Stuart, but he ends up falling asleep. Unfortunately, the voice beckons for Uncle Stuart once more, and he disappears into the night. Scooby wakes up and he notices that Uncle Stuart is gone, so he wakes up the rest of the gang, and they discover that Sharon has disappeared as well. So the gang head back to Kingston Mansion to investigate. Inside the mansion, the gang walk past a bookshelf where they fail to notice the ghostly Elias Kingston phantom slip out of a secret room where Sharon is tied up and gagged. The gang split up looking for clues, and Scooby is accosted by an unfriendly bulldog. Some fun shenanigans occur, and we see the legendary scene where Shaggy ends up in the shower with his roller skates. Eventually, the gang hook back up and they determine that the ghost is a fraud because a real ghost would not require a watchdog.
You know it or not, Scooby, you found our first clue.
Who ever heard of a ghost needing a watchdog to scare anybody away?
Shaggy also comes across the skeletal remains of Uncle Stuart, who has aged himself into a skeleton. The ghost of Elias Kingston reappears and warns the gang once more that if he does not get the Weatherby fortune, his hex of aging everyone in the house will remain.
This is the last warning. Either the fortune is here by morning, or all those in the Weatherby house shall grow old. Now go!
The ghost walks away and the gang follow him outside where they watch him walk into a mausoleum. Shaggy dusts the door for prints, and this ends up being clue number 2, as real ghosts would never leave fingerprints.
Ghosts wouldn't leave fingerprints.
Like maybe he can turn into a bat.
Bribed with 4 Scooby snacks, Shaggy enters the mausoleum and declares it safe for entry. The rest of the gang walk in and Velma spots a big book of crystallomancy, which is a book on how to use a crystal ball.
This might be a clue. It's a book on crystallomancy.
Crystal O'Macy.
It's a book about how to use a crystal ball.
Freddy suggests that there is an old Swami place in town and there might be a connection.
Say, there's an old Swami place in town.
Before they can head out to investigate, the ghost locks them in the mausoleum. Trapped, they knock on walls for a secret passage and Scooby is the first to discover it. The passage lets them out and the gang drive to the Swami place. Entering, the business is empty, so the gang snoop around and come across a levitating table. The crystal ball on top of the table lights up where Elias's head materializes and threatens the gang. The table chases the gang around the room until they end up breaking it. Underneath the table, they find a fan, which was powering about the room. Inside the Swami parlor, they also find a professional makeup kit and a miniature TV camera that is connected to the crystal ball. Satisfied with their clues, Freddy comes up with a plan. Using Shaggy and Scooby as bait, the two straggle into the museum with a chest poised as the Weatherby fortune. The two get the ghost to chase them and lead the ghost right into Freddy's trap, which uses the ghost camera tricks and fake skeletons against him.
I'll turn you to bones. Stop, or I'll mummify you.
The gang then trap the ghost in a net and unmask him. There they discover the ghost is Uncle Stuart.
As soon as we clean him up, I'm sure you'll recognize him.
Uncle Stuart.
The makeup kit they found was what he used to make himself look old, and Sharon was kidnapped as she saw the elderly Uncle Stuart's fake wig blow off.
I saw Uncle Stuart's wig blow off.
So he had to take you prisoner.
The Swami was Uncle Stuart's alter ego that he planned on disappearing as he needed a new identity once he got a hold of the fortune. With the sheriff on his way, everyone sits down for a turkey feast, which Scooby has gotten to first. I give this episode a 7 out of 10. I was originally thinking an 8, but the more I thought of it, the more less impressed I was with this episode. I just don't find Elias Kingston all that intimidating or menacing, or his character design isn't that awesome. They even kind of redid him in the title screen where they made him glowing white. Or in this one, he's just kind of like blue, green. I don't know. He's just, I did like, though, that he could put hexes on people, and I love the opening to this episode where you hear his beckoning voice just call out, and you see Uncle Stuart walk possessed through a mausoleum. Gives me a Night of the Living Dead vibe for some reason, and that is what I like most about this episode. This episode did have some good set pieces as well. The old mansion was cool, some of the secret passages. The Swami parlor was interesting too. So that kind of boosts it up for me. But again, there's nothing really interesting about this villain other than he can put hexes on people. And actually, I did like the skeletonized version of Uncle Stuart in the aging factor. I did like that a lot, which is kind of why I was leaning towards 8. I thought that was very clever. It was cool to see the gang have a friend, and their friend was Sharon, and that was cool that, they're traveling around the country visiting friends and such. I like that. I like too that Velma was carrying a fingerprinting kit, and that just ties into the early episodes where the gang were kind of detectives, and that kind of got displaced later on. I felt they didn't really use much gear later on in the earlier episodes, so it was kind of cool to see the fingerprinting kit. I also enjoyed Freddy's trap. That was fun. I liked how he used the villain's technology against him to scare him and to trick him into getting caught. But overall, though, this episode didn't really shine too bright for me, hence the 7 out of 10. But, I might lean towards an 8, but when I'm thinking of all of season 1, again, this one, like Decoy for a Dog Napper, is probably going to be in the bottom half for me. Well, that wraps up another episode. Until next week when we will be covering Never Ape and Ape Man, stay spooky.